Good afternoon. So that's OceanX, a prime example of capacity building at the local level. I wish I was one of those students who were able to get on that boat. And I see a lot of familiar faces there. Actually, some of those students were people I know about, and I know they have had a very good experience in that OceanX vessel. So good afternoon, my name is Danwei Huang. You can call me Dan or Danwei. And I want to thank you for joining us for this session. So a bit about myself before we move on. I'm with the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum at the National University of Singapore. I'm also affiliated with the Tropical Marine Science Institute and the Center for Nature-Based Climate Solutions. I'm a researcher there, so I work on coral reef, biodiversity and conservation in the Southeast Asian region. So I want to thank the work and support by Dalio Philanthropies for allowing us to be able to work closely with our partners in Southeast Asia on a variety of projects, including the Marine Biodiversity Survey of Southeast Asia and the second phase of the Singapore Comprehensive Marine Biodiversity Survey. So as you can see, I'm really just a researcher. I work on biology, and so I'm glad I'm not one of the speakers. I'm a moderator, and but I will bring on board 4 expert panelists here today to talk about Southeast Asia as a global model for ocean sustainability. Now, of course, Southeast Asia contains the Center of Biodiversity, but it also has various pressures, right? They are putting ocean sustainability at risk. So through this panel, we will highlight regional partnerships across Southeast Asian region, some scientific initiatives, and the catalytic role of convening entities. The discussion will also address how collaborative platforms can bridge gaps between science, policy, and action, and to drive scalable, positive conservation outcomes. So this panel has 3 main objectives. I will categorize them into the what, the how, and the why. So what? So what are the roles of convening platforms? And these platforms and mechanisms that our distinguished panelists today have helped establish or shaped. Their roles in uniting diverse stakeholders, from governments and scientific institutions to NGOs and regional organizations, to enable coordinated and effective conservation efforts. So there are great ideas everywhere, some greater than others, but not all are suitable or scalable where they originate, right? So, and essentially sometimes resources are just lacking in those specific areas. So these platforms are really critical for addressing, for bringing these conservation ideas into real-world application, for addressing pressing environmental challenges such as climate change and the biodiversity crisis. So second is the how. So we'll talk about some real-world examples of how science-driven approaches have informed policymaking and catalyzed conservation actions in Southeast Asia. Now, a lot of science is actually being done in the region. Of course, not enough. I would say we need to do a lot more, but there's a lot of science already being done by locals, international scientists, and so on. Many challenges do remain, but across many of these conservation and research projects across the region, we can actually learn from the positive ways in which science can drive conservation policy and actions. So for instance, where I'm from Singapore, it's small, so a lot of work arguably has been done into its coastal and marine ecosystems. So policies such as the designation of the 2 marine parks in Singapore have leveraged on the most current scientific understanding, right, on the connectivity, the biodiversity of its marine ecosystems. So we hope to hear more of such examples across the region in Southeast Asia in various contexts, which I think eventually will lead to positive conservation outcomes. And the third is the why, right, the value of cross-border, cross-sector collaboration, right? Why do we want to seize on opportunities to engage international cooperation agencies, philanthropy and institutional partners to amplify regional conservation impact. So without further ado, I'll just bring our 4 panelists onto the stage. So first off, we have Emily Landis, Global Climate and Ocean Director, Nature Conservancy. Carol Liu, Managing Director, Eka Family Foundation. Melissa Wright, Oceans Program Lead, Bloomberg Philanthropies. And then right on my far left is Uma Sachidanandam, Director of Conservation and Science, WWF Singapore. So I'm going to hand over my time to each of the panelists in turn, and then they'll talk to you about their work as well as what their organizations do. So thank you very much. Melissa?
Thank you so much. I know that it's been a long day, and it's a beginning of only a few more days of this excellent set of meetings on Philanthropy Asia. And I am so excited to be able to share more about what we're up to. So I sit at Bloomberg Philanthropies, based in New York City. I run our ocean initiative, and we have focused on ocean conservation and sustainable fisheries for about 10 years. And we have gone from a focus in just 3 countries to now more than 70 countries. Our overarching efforts at this moment in time are building off of the global commitment that was made at the UN Convention on Biological Diversity in December of 2022, a commitment for the world to protect 30% of its ocean by 2030. And we are working in several geographies and in different areas of the ocean, from the coastal zone, where so much of the economic activity, the biodiversity, and people's livelihoods are, and all the way out to the high seas. So we're super excited to share more about how that looks in Southeast Asia and what we might be able to do to work more closely with donors like yourselves. Thank you.
And hi, thanks for having me here. So I am the Global Director of the Climate and Ocean Work at the Nature Conservancy. I've been at the Nature Conservancy for 11 years now, building out 3 major pillars of work. So the first is science. What I like to say is you can't protect what you can't see. And so we do a lot of work on coastal mapping, understanding ecosystem services, and being able to drive finance to the places that have the most impact. Our second major body of work is policy. So as you were saying, thinking about things like the United Nations Framework on Climate Change. When I started in 2015 with the Paris Agreement, when we saw the different nationally determined contributions come in, only 20 included the ocean. We've seen that more than double, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of the Brazil COP this year and seeing oceans even play a bigger role. The third is just understanding philanthropic dollars are really important. We love it. I know where I am right now, so I have to be careful. But private capital is also extremely important. So we do a lot of looking at different types of financial models. So that's carbon markets, and also something I'll talk about in a little bit, which is BC+. So looking at innovative business models that can actually benefit oceans and coastal wetland systems. And then just lastly, I sit on the steering committee of the Global Mangrove Alliance. That was created because we realized we needed more than just one NGO. And so bringing together lots of different NGOs to elevate our work. So my 3 bodies of work are great, but it's only good if I share the knowledge with others. And so, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Carol.
Thank you. Thank you, Elaine, for inviting us to be part of this conversation. To be honest, I feel a little bit like a fraud in a room full of people with great experience compared to us. We're relatively new, so by way of introduction, my name is Carol. I run a second-gen family foundation out of Singapore. We are only 5 years old, and we only went into oceans seriously about 3 years ago, so we are really young, and so again, I'm like a little fraud here, so please bear with me. But I hope we make it up with grit and passion for the issue. We are very passionate about the intersection between people and nature. So all we do is really kind of deploying grants and impact investments in this intersection. So what I mean is, instead of just protecting vital ecosystems, we also are very interested in uplifting the people connected to these ecosystems. And at our core, that means that we go to the ground and we find locally rooted actors, and that's locally community-based organizations, national NGOs, and we fund them directly, and we work with them and we build a relationship with them long term. When I say long term, I mean like 10, 20, 50 years. So we tend to commit in an issue for a long term. Obviously, we fund in tranches and segments, but we kind of want to commit to the issue in a very, very long term. We are hyper-focused in Thailand, but we are slowly moving out into Southeast Asia, thanks to our friends in, not sure if they're in the room, but we joined a pool fund called 30 by 30, just because of the importance of the global goals as well. So I'll pause here and happy to share more later.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Uma. I'm the Director for Conservation and Science at WWF Singapore. So my role is basically to oversee our local conservation work as well as the regional work that we support in Southeast Asia mostly. We are branching out a little bit, but most of our work in the region is it's concentrated in Southeast Asia. So we look at many different things at our office. At the moment, we have three different pillars. We have what we call our nature theme. We look at nature conservation, species conservation. We work with local communities in the region. We have our community theme, where we really focus on local communities, increasing public awareness about conservation issues in Singapore through our education outreach team. And here I want to give a really big shout out to Dalio Philanthropies. They've supported some of our projects. So last year we had Seize the Day, which was really about marine conservation and awareness in Singapore. That was last year. And I think this year they're supporting us again. Thank you so much to take this work to the region. So marine education in the region. And then finally, we have our climate and sustainability pillar. So we look at sustainable financing, we look at climate issues, we're really going slowly into even exploring carbon credits and all that at the moment. We also work quite a fair bit, but mainly now through our network in policy. So similar to the other organizations and reps here, we are really looking at how we can support the global 30 by 30 goals, GBF. We have our own network relook at how we support the 30 by 30 goals. So we have a new roadmap 30 by 30 that's coming out as well. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the work that we're doing with you later.
All right, thank you very much. So we talk a lot about philanthropy. So maybe my first question is a very general one, and I will pose that to Melissa. What do you think is the role of philanthropy in ocean and climate priorities? And maybe you can share a bit more about Bloomberg Ocean Initiative and the work you're doing there, and some examples of where your local partners are working in the Southeast Asian region.
Sure, yeah. So I think had you asked me this question a few days ago, even before I visited the Our Ocean conference in Busan, Korea, I might have had a slightly different answer. I think that being on the ground with colleagues and other donors, they've opened my mind to the role of philanthropy and the diversity of the types of philanthropy that can really be put forth to advance marine conservation. So Bloomberg Philanthropies, our primary role is in grant making. So we work in a few different ways. Bloomberg Philanthropies is the home of all of Michael Bloomberg's philanthropic efforts, so from his corporate giving, personal giving, and his grant making. We also support him in his roles as UN Special Envoy for Climate Ambition and Solutions. And so we really see the way that our grant making can de-risk certain types of activities in the marine environment. We're proud to support, in some limited ways, academic research, collaboration among research institutions, and exploration. So these types of activities are usually tied to the interest of a country or a civil society institution or organization that wants to explore a certain area and identify biodiversity, identify the species, and understand its value value for potential protection. So that's one area of philanthropy that I know the Dalio philanthropy team knows quite a bit about and has advanced around the world. We work with partners that provide technical and policy support, advising, and assistance, analytical assistance, and economic research into different marine conservation policies. So we work with national governments, we work with provincial and state governments through our partners. And we also are very proud to work with local leaders. So Michael Bloomberg, as a 3-term mayor of New York City, understands the value of local leadership and knows that that's where a lot of the issues of the day really are seen and felt by local citizens. So we support local leaders and mayors to mentor each other, to identify the types of projects and programs and policy asks to different levels of government so they can serve as a constituency for ocean protection and climate action in coastal areas. Another way that we work is working directly with coastal communities. We work through our partners, especially RARE and Blue Ventures in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, and in Indonesia in particular. And these communities, they have jurisdiction over their coastal waters, and they are the ones who know the fishing seasons. They know their coral reefs. And the way that our partners work with them is to provide the kinds of support to set up management regimes, really put the laws and rules in place, and professionalize what has often been sort of a part of the gray economy. The other way that we work in philanthropy on ocean and climate is in convening. We really believe in the power of partnership and understand that philanthropy often can be quite fixed in its thinking about what's going to work. So we like to bring different actors together from the private sector, government, academia, and otherwise, and the civil society sector and local leaders, and have people bring together some of the best ideas so that they can innovate together and come up with integrated solutions. We've seen this work in several areas of our climate portfolio. The C40 network of megacities is a great example, all the way down to the work with the Coastal 500, which was an Earthshot Prize finalist. That's a network of mayors that have committed to marine protection in their communities. Finally, I think that working alongside the private sector and understanding what the needs are, and also what the risks that they are imposing upon themselves or that they are seeing in the waters. One of the great organizations that we work closely with is Global Fishing Watch, where they're really driving transparency and data into decision making on marine awareness or maritime awareness and security. So this is an arena that I think there is ripe for even more attention from the private sector to better understand their own risk, but also to innovate and use what we're seeing in AI and machine learning to really help reveal what's happening on the ocean, but also to come up with new ways to protect and manage it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Before I move on, just a quick shout out, reminder that you can also ask questions, and you can please post your questions using the QR code on the screen. So thank you. I think there have been some mentions about how we integrate or use that science and translate that to policymaking. Maybe we can shift a bit more into that and try and understand how to do that, right? So, and I'm sure there are challenges, so maybe you can ask Emily to share about those challenges, how these challenges can be overcome, and how you whether there's any examples of such science-driven approach in Southeast Asia that you've come across. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we think about these challenges, and the way the Nature Conservancy addresses them is in 3 different ways. So first is thinking about philanthropy and the role of philanthropy in technology. So what we can do is use philanthropic dollars to test the latest technology before it's ready for private investment. Because starting right off with private investment, the technology may not be developed as much, it's just risky. So being able to bring in philanthropy to make sure that technology is actually going to work is critical, which is why we're so happy to be partnering with Dalio and OceanX on our Ocean Innovation Challenge. So what we're doing there is we're actually mapping and understanding using satellite imagery what's happening in Indonesia's marine protected area. And so that first bit is so important because we're seeing, does it work? Can we scale this? And if the answer is yes, let's bring in private capital. And so I think that's really important in this beginning stage, is using philanthropy to bring tech in and make sure the tech works. The second is kind of a weird one. And so I really love philanthropy and private sector financing, but it's not always the catalyst. Sometimes it's very, very simple. It's trust and friendship. And so the Global Mangrove Alliance, when it was founded, it wasn't founded because we had philanthropic dollars or we had private investment. It was the 5 big NGOs that work on mangroves. So it was the Nature Conservancy, WWF, Conservation International, IUCN, and Wetlands International. And we all came together with the humility of understanding 90% of mangrove restoration was failing, and we had more loss in mangroves than in the terrestrial forest space. So we weren't doing it right, and we needed to come together and work together to do things better. And so really, like, what I've found is when we put aside our institutional hats and we realized we're friends, we want to work together, that's the most important thing, and then the funding came. And once we actually were able to show that together we could actually change mangrove conservation and restoration at scale, then we saw philanthropic. Then we saw the private institutions coming and saying, how can we help you? And so I'm happy to report restoration successes are on the move. So we're not seeing that 90% anymore failure rate. We're seeing far less than that because we're learning from each other's mistakes. We're also seeing conservation work. We actually have lower rates of loss now than a lot of terrestrial forests. So this impact is working. But I do also want to say what I think, in similar to technology and using philanthropic dollars, another great way of doing this is philanthropic dollars to de-risk investments, and especially investments in businesses. So another radical partnership that the Nature Conservancy has is actually with Conservation International on something called BC+. And the idea is there are amazing businesses out there that are benefiting nature. So think about things like sea cucumber. Healthy seagrasses lead to healthy sea cucumbers, which then leads to selling these sea cucumbers on the market, getting a revenue for these coastal communities. And so that's been something we've been trying to develop. So what are these radical new ideas? So I'm actually here this week with a group of 10 businesses that have radical ideas. And we're going to be picking 6 of them who will be doing an official pitch on Friday. And I'm making my pitch. If you're interested in coming, let me know. So that's my pitch. And one of the most amazing things that happened is a story I have from yesterday. I was meeting with a group called Mercy, and they're doing restoration of mangroves and nipa in the Mahakam Delta. And for those who don't know, the Mahakam Delta has been decimated by shrimp ponds since the 1990s due to lots of different reasons. And so they're coming in and saying, how can we restore? And so their pitch had 3 different things. First, it was better shrimp ponds. The second was these very bespoke rugs. And then the last thing they had was nipa sugar. And so when we started to unpack this, they were like, oh yeah, this nipa sugar, it's great. We have like national off-takers, but we're not sure. And I was like, hold on. You have this amazing product called nipa sugar. It's leading to restoration of the mangroves and of the nipa palms in the Mahakam Delta, and they're healthier than palm sugar. And you have national demand already for the product. This is scalable. This is an opportunity. And so being able to sit with them and really talk through, it is great for a local livelihood to be using the baskets, 100%. It is really important for you to be doing sustainable shrimp pond. But what's new and innovative is that sugar. And the philanthropic dollars we received to have this workshop is the only reason that happened. And so really using philanthropic dollars to bring us together, to bring the investors to bring the NGOs who have this expertise is really just a huge opportunity. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So actually I have a follow-up question, a quick one. So, and you come from a science background, and in science we work a lot with uncertainty, right? So there are things that we may not know fully, and so how do you convince philanthropy to sort of support you with that set of uncertainties and ensure that they understand what are the risks that they will be taking on if they support your projects?
Yeah, I think the best example of uncertainty is carbon market projects. There is a lot of science uncertainty in these carbon market projects, and they're not quick. And so I've had philanthropic donors come to me and they say, oh, we're going to give you $1 million, but we want 100,000 carbon credits in a year. And I say, I would love to work with you. I would love your funding, but it's not TNC. And so I think it's an honest conversation of what we know, what we can achieve together, and it's a partnership. And you have to just be forthright in, we are doing a portfolio of carbon market projects, and I'm telling you 50% are probably going to fail because the science isn't there, the government will isn't there, myriad of different issues. But I promise at least 50% will succeed. So stay with me on this journey. I promise I'm going to work on it. And I think that really resonates. And so honesty and just saying, I don't know.
Yeah,
so my answer is I don't know.
I think that's important, right? Okay, so since we are on the topic of philanthropic support, maybe I can ask Carol this question about how you think philanthropic support can strengthen and scale. I think the key word here is scale. How do we scale and have conservation be long-term and impact Southeast Asia? And you could share some of the projects that you've been involved in.
I don't know about the scale part, but I can share a bit of what we're trying to do in Thailand. I think maybe first and foremost, when we started out, we really came from the whole idea of trust-based philanthropy, right? And a lot of people in the room kind of subscribe to that approach. And for a lot of family-based or family-driven philanthropy, we kind of are behind the scenes a little bit because we're like, we don't want exposure. We want to kind of be behind our local partners or be behind partners like, the ones on the stage. So for the first 2 or 3 years, we kind of just are unnamed. We go out and find high potential organizations, high potential partnerships or high potential projects and fund them. Essentially, we're just doing grant making or investment, which is very simple. But I think very quickly we realized that wasn't enough. I think for 2 reasons. One, Thailand is not really exciting to work for in the ocean space. There's not many actors actually. I mean, I think people on the stage don't have a very big active portfolio in Thailand. I think that's the truth, that's a fact. So that's one. And 2, we realized that actually the projects and partners in Thailand are not considerably high potential. They wouldn't usually pass the due diligence of most people who are looking to fund. So quickly we were like, okay, we want to be behind the scenes, but we want things to happen in Thailand. What do we do? So we kind of realized that we need to do more. And I think that's something that philanthropy has always been kind of not really being contested or not really being seen as doing. So we actually went around to meet everybody in Thailand. Everybody. I had the time to literally go to every government office, to every local CBOs. I know 100 CBOs in Thailand now. I know everyone. They know me. For good or bad reasons. I went to all the local communities. I visited as many coastal communities as I can. And I think the whole point was just how can we be connected to the entire ecosystem? Because we work across different issues. We do terrestrial also. So if we can't pick one issue, we pick a country, and that's what we did. And we try to be the best at that country. And that's essentially what our family or our team has been doing for the last 3 years. And very happy to share that in the last 18 months, at least 4 of our NGOs have now MOUs with the government. And that's a direct result of our facilitation, not because they can't do it by themselves, they obviously can, but they may not want to have an MOU with the government in the first place, or 2, they don't see eye to eye on many different things. So I think one of the things we try to do is to put different people, unlikely actors, in the same room and kind of see what happens from there. Sometimes they hate each other, and then we kind of like, oh, why, But sometimes they actually see the alignment that they don't actually see before. So actually that's what we've been doing for the last 18 months. And I think in the recent times, we started launching initiatives that's cross-sectorial. So one of the latest initiatives last year that we launched is called Sea Guardians. Sea Guardians because we are really placing fisher folk as the guardians of the seas that we want to, utilize and benefit from. It's looking at 45 sites across Thailand and potentially developing them into OECMs and IMMAs. 45 is ambitious. The pilot projects that the government in Thailand is doing is 4. We are targeting 45. Is it ambitious? Yes. Will we fail? Highly likely. But I think the whole point is, can we bring more local communities to the table and to the boardrooms? Because locally actors, they're structurally excluded from decision making that affects their own lives, like the fish they catch, everything. So what we did was to collect 3,000 fisher folk in the same room. And then we brought the policymakers, we brought the marine scientists, and we kind of forced them into the same room and say, let's collaborate. And structurally, that's quite, it's quite, how to say, conflicting for us, because we are being taught that philanthropy should not dictate what should be done. But at the same time, when we don't see the kind of action or traction or progression in the country or in the space, I think the least we could do is try to put people in the same room and build relationships, and let's see what comes up from there organically. So the project is just started. It's a lot of struggles. My co-founder is actually in the room right now. I think she maybe left, and she's struggling with the science part, because getting scientists to talk to a fisherman and then having policymakers in the room is like we're all speaking different languages, and no forms of translator in the room can actually translate that. Even I get confused and I'm like, what? And it's not Thai English, they're all speaking English, but it's different languages. So I think that to us is really fascinating, and it's something that we really want to fund more. So we are funding the translators, we are funding the coordinator role that nobody wants to fund. Another coalition in Thailand that we're funding now is called 30 by 30 Thailand Coalition. It's actually a citizen-led movement of 100 CBOs in Thailand who are kind of trying to collect their voices and speak to the parliament about what they feel about 30 by 30. Because to be frank, nobody knows what 30 by 30 is in Thailand. You ask a fisherman, they'll be like, what? 30%, like, what does that even mean? You ask the government, they're like, oh yeah, we subscribe to it, we sign up to it actually, but do we have a plan? No. Are we gonna write a plan? Maybe. How? We don't know. So I think the coalition is kind of basically funding them to actually be at a table and have a voice at the seat. So we're kind of pushing the different departments of the government to come together and draft the plan together. And it's quite embarrassing to say that Thailand doesn't have a plan. And please don't tell other people. I mean, maybe not quote me. I mean, I know there's media in the room. Please do not quote me on that. But we really do not have a plan. We are at 4.83% now. We want to reach 15% in 2030. But how? It's a big question. But we have 100 CBOs who are ready to act. They are all working in different regions in Thailand. They're all doing 30 by 30 work in somewhat related ways, but not connected. They're all in silo. So we've been funding a lot of these conversations, and that just means flights, it's food. It's things that doesn't have programmatic outcomes. I mean, how do you measure that? There's nothing there. So that's kind of an exciting for us and frustrating thing for us to do that in the last 18 months. And the last part, I think I just want to touch on the science part. I think we were talking to the DMCR, which is the Department of Marine Coastal Resources in Thailand. They actually have a very big science unit. They have like scientists that are brilliant, smart, they do day in, day out research. They're always in the field diving and doing tons of things. And I'm like, oh, what kind of research have you done? They tell me this paper, that paper, everything is in Thai, doesn't matter. Then I'm like, okay, how do you translate that research that you've done into action? What do you mean? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? We're having this conversation. So a lot of what's happening in Thailand is brilliant. I mean, the universities are very advanced. They publish a lot of brilliant paper, but nobody really takes it up and asks, like, how do we translate that to real world action and outcomes? So we've been starting to fund a lot of science to policy translation work. Like, what do they mean by that? So for instance, we launched a project last year. It's called Coral Connectivity. We're funding a local research team that looks at coral spawning and where do the spawns go after they spawn. And for the first time in my life, I'm a diver for like 15 years. I've never seen coral spawning. I saw it last month. And what we do is when the coral spawns and we verify it, we deploy drifters and we just let the drifter drift along with the spawns and we see where they land. And why is this important? Because the government in Thailand has been deploying artificial reef anywhere, everywhere, based on where their fuel stations are, based on where tourism is, based on where they think artificial reef can grow. There's no science behind. I mean, there is some science, but not like deep science. But so what's happening when we went to them and pitched this project, they were like, oh, that's what we've been wanting to do for 30 years, but we have no funding. I was like, look, we can fund it, but can you be part of this journey? Which means, can you pledge that if we have results and we can verify it, please start to adjust your artificial reef deployment based on the science. And they're like, okay, that sounds right. And actually, I'm happy to share that as of this kind of last month, it's been 6 months, they're now co-funding the research because they decided to do genetics. Because we can say, oh, the drifter drifts the spawns to Koh Tao, and let's deploy the artificial reef there. But now what we want to do is measure the genetics of the reef that grows to prove that it actually came from the source that we deployed the drifter. Because it's one thing to say that we assume it went there, but it's the second thing to say that actually we can prove, genetically speaking, it's the same species and the exact same spawns that we saw in the source area. So this is an ongoing project for 3 years. It's very small to begin with, but with the kind of traction we see from the government, I think we could see more kind of science to policy work that we can fund in potentially in the area. So that's just a bit of what we've been trying to battle with. So I wouldn't say scale, but I think we are starting to see interest from unlikely actors, and we are all kind of having difficult translation exercise every day. That's our day-to-day life in Thailand, at least. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. This is a side note, but if there's one, as a biologist, I think if there's one biological phenomenon that you can observe in your lifetime, it will be coral spawning. So if you have the privilege to do it, I think it's really awesome. So we've talked a lot about local and national initiatives and so on. Maybe let's shift gears a bit and talk about cross-border and international collaboration. And my question to Uma with regards to this is how you think we can engage countries, especially countries in this region with very diverse marine ecosystems, to collaborate on cross-border conservation efforts. And have you seen any successful examples of such collaboration in the region?
So I think cross-border collaboration is really, really very important. We focus a lot these days on what we call nature-based solutions. And in order for that to really happen, there needs to be quite a lot of collaboration going on between governments, because you need that sort of large-scale work to really happen, right? And if I just focus on marine ecosystems, so your seas and oceans, they are vast. Water doesn't know any boundaries. Currents just bring wildlife and pollutants, from country to country. You really can't stop it. And the marine ecosystem has just got so much of rich source of habitats for us. You've got your coral reefs, you've got your seagrass beds, your mangroves, and they provide so much for people, right? So we have our food, we have climate regulation, we have our coastal protection, carbon sequestration. All this good stuff is happening, ecosystem services going on. But they're also seriously under threat. So there's the overfishing, there's the coastal development, unregulated harvesting and pollution, like I mentioned. So it's not as if governments don't know. I think they're all well aware. It's also a question of, I think, capacity on their end and willingness to take action. So if you're starting from scratch and you want to put together something, I think you need to have that recognition from the governments that they're going to have to get the neighboring countries involved in this. There needs to be that political will and backing to take it forth, right? And NGOs can come into that space to offer that sort of support in certain areas where maybe the government isn't able to do a lot of things. So if you have millions of miles of coastline, I mean, you can't have rangers everywhere, right? So that's where community groups can come in and everything. So I think they know that action needs to be taken, but sometimes maybe also there's something that NGOs maybe, right, we can do is just highlight some of the benefits of coming together. So if we really think about it, if you can come together and put up a united front, there's a lot of things that we can have a shared investment in, right? So we can go to development banks together as a government, several governments together. You can get large-scale financing for longer term, right? You can have policies in your country that have positive impacts on your neighbors, right? So there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of opportunity for training and capacity building of people. When you come together, you can share case studies of what didn't go right, case studies of what's gone right, right? You can have large data sets that you can share. So there's a lot of positive things that can come out of it. And if I can maybe give an example of how NGOs come in, I think it's easier if the governments already have that initiative or interest to get started. Then you can have NGOs come in. So if I can just use a WWF example, so we are quite a huge network. We have a presence in more than about 100 locations all over the world. And we've spent a long time actually working on the ground, because we have our researchers and our conservationists working on the ground. We work very closely in many different places with government stakeholders on policy issues. We work with local communities, and with local communities, we help them with microfinancing, we help them with business plans for sustainable alternative livelihoods. And communities work with us and lead conservation projects, so species restoration, habitat restoration projects, right? And then we do a lot of training. We even help communities learn how to engage government stakeholders and local agencies better, because sometimes they're just like, we can't do this, we're not trained, we don't know what to do, we don't know what to say, we're intimidated. So we come in and we sort of help them do it, and of course, I think at the end of the day, you need, of course, to have some sort of exit strategy where you've already empowered them and they're comfortable, they know what to do, and they can take it forward. So it's helpful when you already have the sort of government interest in backing, and you can say, hey, I can come in here and I can help you. So maybe one good example of how this has played out in Southeast Asia is the Coral Triangle initiative. So that was actually initiated by Indonesia way back in 2009. And they got together 6 countries. So I think Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, and Timor-Leste. So they came together and they agreed that they would work towards biodiversity conservation in this biodiversity hotspot together with food security. All right. So it's been very, very, very successful. And WWF basically has come in and sort of like stepped up and created our own Coral Triangle program to support this multi-government initiative, right? And I think most recently in December, we actually signed another MOU with the Coral Triangle initiative to take the work that we've been doing, and just to get it out there and get it spread out. So I think there's opportunity elsewhere to do something like that. We're actually working on something right now in our office to bring another group of I think another 2 countries together to work on joint work along the coastlines. So I think this is one example. And if you're looking at like success sort of stories, and if you don't mind, it's like personal stories that I've experienced. I've just like had the privilege to visit some of these sites. I went to Sabah last year, and just in February this year, I went back. We actually, through our Coral Triangle program, we've actually launched what we call our community peer-to-peer learning hubs. So this is when members come together and they have sharing of case studies, right? And they sort of find out what every other community group in coastal communities has been doing. So I actually went on these things, and I was actually really, really heartened by some of the stories that I heard of how sharing has happened and how people have shared benefits. So if I can just share one story, or maybe I have 2 stories, okay? So one is, I met this in Feb. I went to Sabah and I met this group of ladies from an island called Umadal off Sabah in Sampurna. So they had formed a women's association quite way back. And then they have this tradition of weaving, using pandanus leaves to weave mats and bags. And we actually came in to help them with the business plan on how they could do that. And they were so successful that they've actually displayed their products in Paris, in Korea. They've come to Singapore. They've sold their products at the National Gallery. And they've been teaching the technique to other women in other islands in Sabah. And when I was there at this gathering, right, of all these different communities, there were people from the Philippines and Indonesia there as well, besides Malaysia. And there was this group of Filipino women who were doing something very similar back in the Philippines. And when these 2 groups of women met, they started to take out all their products, right? And then they put them out on the table. The table's like this. And I was like, okay, wow. So I just kind of like went and eavesdropped. And then they were like, oh, this material looks fantastic. So the ladies from the Philippines, they looked at the ladies from Sabah, and they were like, I don't know how you guys do this. The technique, I mean, the quality of workmanship is really, really superb. And they were like, can we visit your workshop? Can you come over to the Philippines and teach the rest of the ladies? We want to really level up on the thing, and we really see how this product, can really sell and earn us some income. So what's happened with the Sabah ladies, of course, now you've got transfer of information, but not only that, right? They've managed to make enough income for themselves that now their families no longer do dynamite fishing. cyanide fishing. They've stopped collecting turtle eggs, and instead they've taken some of the proceeds to set up a turtle hatchery on their island. They actually take tourists in and do a little ecotourism, trip. They show them the bags and they show them the turtle hatchery. They set up a recycling system on the island, and now they can send their kids to school with the funds that they've got. They can get medical care for their kids. So previously they've always depended on their husbands, but now this thing has totally changed the economic outlook for them, right? So this is like really something really amazing, and I've never really heard this sort of stories, and I saw it with my own eyes, exchange happening, people, right? And at the same location, we also had youths from Mabul Island, which is very close to Sipadan, if any of you go diving. And WWF, once again, we work with these youth from this island. We also pulled together a scuba diving company called Scuba Junkies. And what we did was we trained the youth to do coral restoration. So they picked 3 different sites, and they tested out 3 different methodologies, and they wanted to see what worked. So I went there to have a look, and okay, so I'll just tell you the truth. One of the sites was like a loss, a total loss, okay? But the other 2 were doing pretty well. And at this learning hub, the youth were sharing the techniques that they were doing with another group of people from Indonesia. So they were comparing notes and telling people about what worked for them, what didn't work for them, right? So this was a second example. There was also people who, this group of people from Indonesia, I think it was Wakatobi and Raja Ampat, they had helped and worked together with the government to set up a marine protected area, and they were helping to patrol it and be rangers. And it was so successful that people were sneaking in to catch the fish within the MPA because it was doing so well. So. And they were transferring that knowledge to other people in Tun Abdul Mustafa Park in Sabah. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity to share information, and these sort of community learning hubs are a wonderful way to do this. And I think my final example, not community-based, but more science-based example, is a project that WWF sort of co-founded within the Coral Triangle program called Shell Bank. And this is where we actually have a traceability, a toolkit to trace genetic material from turtles, right? So you can take a sample from a turtle, live turtle, turtle parts, turtle eggs, whatever, and then you can upload it into a global database for DNA. And so if, like, say tomorrow I find or I confiscate turtle samples from somewhere, I can actually compare my database. I'll be able to trace down to the exact beach where this turtle was born, for example. So if you find that, there's a whole bunch of turtles coming up from one particular location, say in Indonesia or Malaysia, you can just speak to law enforcement in that country, and you can get them to take more action, right? So either more patrolling or whatever else you need to do. And it's gone beyond the Coral Triangle countries right now. It's actually gone global for us. So I think these are just some of the success stories, and I think there's much more to come. So if you go into the Coral Triangle Initiative website, there's a whole slew of positive things that have come out from this sort of multi-cross-boundary, multi-government agency collaboration.
Thank you, Uma. I think it's really heartening to hear of these positive examples, and I think we really need to hear more of this, more of these examples coming forward. So at this stage, maybe we can move on to the questions from the floor. My eyesight is not really good, but I will try my best. So these are questions from the floor, and let me see if we have. Oh, you do have this. Oh, yes. Thanks. Okay. Right. So I'll just start from the one at the top. If you put yourself in your counterpart's shoes, if you're an NGO and then your funder, what would you seek them to better understand to improve collective impact on oceans? Perhaps I can pose this question to Melissa. What do you think, if you are an NGO?
Well, I think that some of the things we've heard from the stage today are best practices for collective impact. I really appreciated Carol's example of translating between the different sectors, and everybody may be speaking the same language technically, but not the same vernacular, not the same jargon, not the same colloquialisms. And I really think that being able to break down those kind of linguistic barriers and break out of your silos to be able to see where not only the NGOs but the communities that they're working with, what's motivating them, what their real issues are, and be able to see how your perspective and the resources and skills that you have to bring to bear can apply. I think so many times, especially in the NGO space, I have been at an NGO, I am now a funder, you come in with a template, a model, a best practice, a proven solution, and you're so enthusiastic about how it can work for the next person. There's not enough listening, not enough clarity on what the issues are in this new context that might affect the impact of what you're trying to achieve. So I encourage NGOs and funders alike to continue to share not only the what you want done, but why and how it might be most applicable to the current political opportunity or facts on the ground.
Is there anyone of you would like to add to the question?
So if I was a funder, which I have never had a chance to be yet, so maybe someday, I would say that one of the things that I've seen is there's not a lot of patience, and like thinking about patient capital, and not everything can get done in 1 year. And so I see a lot of these grants that are very small, so it's a 1 to 2 year grant, and then the expectations of the things that you're going to deliver sometimes can be quite a lot, and they're quite ambitious. And so making sure that you take the funders on the journey to understand, I can't deliver all of that in 2 years. I understand you also have your bottom line, but making sure that it's very clear all of these different steps. And I find that that's really important when you're thinking about on the level of the communities, because a lot of these communities are not equipped to be taking in millions of dollars and making these big deliverables the next day. And so it takes time to work with the community, to understand the local ecological knowledge of the community, and really building out, because many of them have the capacity. They know the science. They know what needs to happen. They just need to know how to, speak the right language, and know how to talk to donors, know how to do the work. And so that takes time, and that means that the deliverables that we promise might not be made tomorrow, but they will be made, and they'll be more impactful and more lasting if we have enough time to do it properly. And I think that there are some amazing funders out there that really do understand that and understand the need of funding policy, needing to fund the collaboration, needing to fund the science before those deliverables can be made. I'm glad to be sharing the podium and stage with some of those funders, and I just would say that's been a challenge that I've seen, and also there's a great opportunity to continue and educate and move to that more holistic approach.
Thank you. Perhaps I will have this question posed for either Carol or Uma. You have any examples of projects or investment funds that, while having a positive impact on the oceans, are also economically viable and can deliver impact and financial returns to impact-driven investors? Oh, yes.
Well, the short answer is no. I mean, we don't really seek financial returns, to be frank, so I'm not really in the space to answer this question. Like, we are experimenting with a lot of like potentially economically viable projects, but I think in the ocean space it's really nascent. So I mean, I'm really excited about BC Plus because like we've connected on this and I'm so excited. But like in the Sea Guardians project I talked about, we are investing quite a lot in micro businesses, so looking at kind of within the local communities, what can they grow out of their livelihoods? Because if you ask them to don't fish in this zone or use sustainable gears in this zone and kind of like do protection of the spawning grounds in this zone, honestly, what are they going to fish and what are they going to eat? So I think for me, it's like we really need to crack this kind of like, if we're not going to ask them to fish the same way they are fishing or they have been fishing for decades, what is that, right? So I think livelihoods investment is a huge kind of investment that we are trying to make now. But have we cracked it? No, 100% no. And I think a lot of the current vehicles or current capital flow at least in Thailand, is all debt centered. Can we loan the fisher folk to do fish processing? But my question is like, debt, like how are they going to repay that debt if they have not done business at all? They're just 10 women who wants to kind of make fish sauce or fish namprik. It's like a Thai chili kind of thing out of the fish. And how are they going to sell it? Where is the market access? Where is everything? So I think the things that we've been trying to do now is working with people who can actually unlock the markets and build the market that doesn't exist today. Because the demand for traceable seafoods, the demand for fish processing products or aquaculture that's clean and green, it's not there. Nobody's going to pay premium for this, at least in Thailand for now. So for us, it's really looking into investing in market-based mechanisms and unlocking the markets available before we kind of invest in the business, because it's kind of a chicken and egg. Have you cracked it? No. But if anybody has an answer, please call me, because I'm very interested to know and work there in Thailand. So yeah, so looking forward to BC Plus on Friday.
Thank you. Melissa, do you know of any examples like this? Sort of project investment funds like this?
I think that, sorry, we're not typically involved in impact investing. And so I can probably pass the mic, or we can focus on a different question.
Maybe we can ask the room. Maybe somebody here actually has an answer.
Yeah.
No?
No? Okay, maybe, yeah.
I mean, I could
Emily.
talk about BC Plus, but were you about to? No. So, I mean, I think what I am seeing is that there are some opportunities for these investment funds. And so I try to level set that the ocean isn't where the terrestrial forest systems are. They're just not. So that's why everybody's kind of saying, but that's because there is opportunity, and I do see it there. And I mean, I'm seeing it this week with some amazing communities with these amazing ideas that have scalability. And I think what's really important is that the scale isn't because it's something that is needed. Like, alternate to palm sugar using NEPA is huge. That's a game changer. It's less destructive than what we're seeing with palm, and it's also helping restoration. And so I think that there are those, and we call it like the shade-grown coffee of the coastal systems. And I think we're just unlocking that now. And I think if we can get just like a year or two, I think all of us on this stage will have some great examples. We're almost there, is mine.
Maybe we'll just have one more question, and that's maybe the second last one. How do we ensure that smaller entities such as community-based organizations or even smaller funders have an equal voice in collaboration with larger established stakeholders? Anyone can pick this up?
Actually, we did a partner survey annually about how happy they are with us, which is kind of weird. We're trying to stroke our ego, but we always fail because the answers you get back is really quite interesting. So we actually asked all our NGOs, like, if you were asked, what would you do? And what is one thing you really want to see change? And this is basically it. A lot of people is like, how can I get my fisher folk to the stage? I mean, look at today. None of them are here. Like, we're talking about their lives, but I mean, like, where are they? Like, and I feel so, oh, sorry. So I was just in Busan last week, and I think that's kind of it, right? I mean, I was at a conference. It was my first time in OOC. I've never attended any of these, and I was kind of curious, like, oh, we're talking about like coastal fisher folk and everything, and I was really happy to see that the opening, Hanyo, those who know the Jeju women divers, they actually have choir. So retired Jeju divers actually they sing about their livelihoods and everything, and I was blown away by their presence in the event. They opened the ceremony with a song of their lives and how they connected to the oceans and everything. And I think out of all the panels, there was one fisher folk from the Pacific Islands, and that's it. And I was like, how can we get them on stage? I mean, let's not forget, I mean, sure, they don't speak the language, but so what? Are you even understanding what I'm saying now? I mean, it's kind of like we're just all blabbering, right? So I'm like, I really want to see more of them on stage like that. Maybe not specifically just to parade them, but really to hear from them, actually, what are the challenges? Like, what do you think about 30 by 30? Like, how does it connect to your lives? Like, things like that. So for me, it's like, and I've been trying to encourage them. And to be frank, it's not that nobody is trying to get them on stage. A lot of people are. But they're like, I don't want to go. Like, who will listen to me? And also, what do I talk about? And like, what do I say? Like, I don't want to just go and complain about life, right? And also, like, the risk to my livelihood. Like, I'm known to be fishing here. What if I say something about the government here, and if I go back and suddenly I'm not, like, my family is not there anymore, like, whatever. So I think they're scared of risk. So I think a lot of what we're trying to do is to encourage them to voice out in local platforms first, in safer grounds where it's closed door, where there's no media, where it's safe for them to say what they want to say without being penalized, and finding the safer policy grounds where they can actually voice out without having real repercussions on their lives. And that is just in recent Thailand. I mean, we're debating about the use of Persine, the kind of the 3mm fishing nets. They have so much opinions about it. They're like, we shouldn't use that nets because we're going to have a lot of bycatch and blah, blah, blah. But they can't say it because you're fighting against the giants in a room, right? So we created kind of small spaces where it's slightly safer, anonymous. I mean, yes, they can be tracked down to some extent, but let's try to protect their identity as much as possible. I don't think it's a major kind of nobody agrees. I think everybody agrees we should do it. The question is how, and how to make it safe for them so that we're not bringing more harm just because you want to see them on stage. It's not our ego thing that's talking. We really need to hear their voices in a safe way. So yeah, that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Carol. I think that's an important lesson. So I think we are at the stage where we will have to close soon, but maybe I'll invite each of our panelists to summarize for us, or at least tell us about your takeaway. But you do this in one word. You do it one word, but of course explain why in a sentence. Maybe start with Melissa. Thank you.
I'm going to choose a hyphenated word.
That's very smart, yes.
Capacity building. I think that capacity building in the funder community, and that's why I'm here. I want to learn from Asia-based philanthropies and donors about what you think are the needs and how the lessons that we've learned through our grant making in Asia and otherwise can support you in your ambition to protect the ocean and your local communities. Capacity building also with the local communities and the fisher folk, and thinking about how their vision for 30 by 30 when they know what it is, and what's best for the future of their communities, how we can help them deliver on that vision.
Emily?
Language. I think it's really critical that we are all speaking the same language and understand each other. I love like the policy, bringing together the policy, the scientists, the community members, and so they can all be together. Because I hear so many times from like these big investors, I've got $100 million that I can invest in these businesses. And then you talk to the coastal community and they're not there yet, and they're not speaking the same language, and they could be there for those investments if we could start teaching each other the right language. And so it's not just on the community to speak the same language, it's also on the investors, it's also on the policymakers to learn their language. And so once we can have a more unified voice, a unified language, I think we'll see a lot more acceleration and change. And so I was very happy to hear everybody here on this panel allude to that and show different examples.
Thank you, Emily. And Carol?
Okay, so I'll go first.
Go.
So I think my word is action. I think the 2030 goals are just around the corner, 5 years left. And I don't mean to throw any shade in the room, but sometimes we spend a lot of time talking. So I think at the end of the day, all that talk and discussion needs to translate into action. And that action needs to come quite urgently. So I'm really hoping that the folks in the room today, if you're thinking about, supporting some of the work that people are talking about this couple of days, then please step up and do so. I think we need to put the money there. We need to put our voices together, and if you want to do something personally, to make a difference, it's pretty easy. You can come and talk to me. You can come and talk to my team over there. We have a lot of people. We have programs that help you transform a lot of things, transform other people's lives, transform lives of youth. So many projects that are out there. So just don't hold back. I think we just need to take a lot more action. Yeah.
Thank you, Uma.
I don't know. I was trying to choose
a few words. If you
okay, no. I think I'll go with listen, because I think sometimes we talk too much, a bit the same strain as that. Like we don't listen enough to the ocean, to the fisher folk, to the farmer, to your neighbors, to your peer. For me, that's what I've been trying to like do for the last 12 months, just listen more and kind of not propose solution on day one, because you don't understand how can you do something that's actually meaningful to anybody. So for me, it's really listen. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks to our panelists for the insightful comments. And thank you very much for your questions and for attending this session. I hope you have a great week ahead. All the best to you and a good evening. Thank you.